You're listening to Beyond the Couch podcast with Dr. Sally Nazari, where we look at you beyond the couch and build ways to enrich your life, share your triumphs, achieve your goals, and most importantly, where we'll be celebrating you. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 6 of Beyond the Couch, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Sally Nazari, licensed psychologist and Reiki master teacher. In our last episode, we went through some of the neurophysiological changes of mindfulness. Today, we're going to look a little bit more in depth at the various ways people have brought this practice into their lives. See, mindfulness is a practice that can be done actively or in more subtle ways. In other words, we can bring this skill into any of the other activities we routinely do in our lives, like walking or brushing our teeth, even washing dishes, or we can set aside a specific duration of time in our day to devote to a formal practice. This is what most people are familiar with. We'll look at both of these approaches along with some tips, tricks, and practical suggestions for bringing mindful practice into our lives in bite-sized pieces that we can build on so that we can sustain this. That way, we can experience the full benefits and see the cumulative effects. Because mindfulness is about experiences in the present moment, it brings with it a unique versatility. The present is ubiquitous. We just have to bring a non-judgmental and non-reactive awareness to it. Here's the challenge with that. We've become so conditioned to always reacting to our thoughts, whether they're worry thoughts, judgments, or reflections on previous experiences, that it becomes tough to really just observe and take note of our experience in the here and now. We catch our minds wandering, then get frustrated with ourselves about it, then have annoyed thoughts that we can't do a simple thing right. This then sparks other thoughts. Those bring up other reactions. And before we know it, round and round we go. Soon, we give up altogether. The trick with mindfulness is that we will have our minds wander and we will catch ourselves distracted and having reactions. We just want to cultivate noticing it and bringing our awareness and attention back without judging it or ourselves for it. Every time we make this observation and bring ourselves back, we practice the skill of mindfulness. It's simple, but not always easy to do. In fact, it can be really tough for a lot of people to get started. Remember our discussion of neuronal connections in our last episode. The good news is neuroplasticity. We can mold this. In teaching my graduate students foundational therapy skills, I often use the metaphor of learning to drive. I think that particular metaphor is especially useful for us here in looking at learning the skill set of mindfulness. You might remember from your first few driving lessons that it seemed almost overwhelming and that there was so much to juggle and attend to all at once. You had to make sure you knew what was going on in the road, in front of you, behind you, your sides, not to mention the street lights, signs, and the stuff inside the car, like the steering wheel, your speed gauge, your turn signals if you needed them, and you still have to make sure you're navigating accurately for where you need to go. Now, hopefully, none of us are adding to this by texting and driving, but you might have started out with short trips and over time got better at working all the moving parts to do it more easily, more efficiently, and in longer increments. The interesting thing here is that over time, we might not even notice all of these different pieces. We just take note of something we need in that moment, like flipping on a turn signal, and bring our focus back to the road in front of you. Sometimes we might just be in autopilot with our mind wandering, or mindless in our task. Learning any new skill will have a period where we're feeling clumsy, awkward, and maybe a little overwhelmed and confused. But with practice, time, and persistence, we can get to the other side where we're feeling more at ease and in control. Luckily, this makes it easier to then stick to it so we can really enjoy the benefits. My goal today is to give you some tips for getting started and sticking with it when it feels funny or awkward. When we're rebuilding our lives, we sometimes feel like everything we're doing is off, or just not good enough, or wrong. But here's the thing. When we're rebuilding our lives, we're learning a lot of new things. At the same time, we're working to unlearn a lot of things. It's hard, but also really important to bring patience and compassion through this process. Luckily for us, mindfulness can turbocharge this process. Remember from our last episode that mindfulness practice brings changes that expand the temporal junction of the brain, an area of focus in empathy and compassion. Now, the question is, how do we do this in our everyday lives? I recommend to people I work with that we structure this into our regular routine in bite-sized pieces. From there, we could add on more and more as it gets easier and as it becomes more and more a piece of our normal activities, kind of like the driving metaphor. In fact, I suggest a formal sit-down practice or active practice of only 3 minutes a day for 2 to 3 weeks to get started. At the end of the 3 minutes, see how you're feeling and add on another 2 minutes when those initial 2 to 3 weeks pass. Try to do this every day, but if you have to miss a day, just get back to it the following day. And if you do that without judging yourself or beating yourself up about it, well, there's your practice for that day. That said, do your best to practice each day, but be sure you're getting 3 to 4 days of practice in each week. Remember, this is only 3 minutes of your day, and you can decide where in your day to carve out that time. If all things are equal, starting your day with this practice can help to set the tone for the day. The bonus here is that it can help you have a better day overall, but to also not only focus better and be more engaged in the things you're doing, but it will also help make it easier to navigate the stressors, demands, and disruptions that are going to pop up. I do also suggest you plan the time out the night before so that you know when in your day you can make it happen. And if need be, throughout the day, you can make adjustments. This way, you're setting yourself up for success. So let's backtrack for a moment and talk about what you're actually doing with mindfulness. I mentioned a formal practice a few minutes ago. I have a good brief example of this you can access on my website as a guided audio file that I've also linked to in the show notes. With a formal practice, we're bringing our awareness to the present moment in a deliberate way. I'll also include a list of apps that can help us get started with this as well in the show notes. Other than a formal practice, though, we can easily integrate mindfulness into our routine activities. For example, mindful eating has been an important tool for many people making food-related lifestyle changes, whether for weight loss or dietary restrictions. I'm also including a blog post on this in the show notes that I've written. We can also use mindfulness in our chores or exercise routine. Yoga, for instance, cultivates this well, but we can also engage in mindful movement with things like walking. In my Mindfulness Matters challenge, for example, I offer a routine of mindful movement that anyone with any fitness level or mobility can participate in. It's about the awareness and the mindful presence of bringing our attention back to the present experience without judgment or reactivity. Listening to music can be another activity we bring our mindful practice into. Likewise, mindfully having conversations can be a wonderful way to build our skills. Simply bring your attention into the present moment, your experience of listening, and in conversations, of communicating and expressing yourself without attending to your worry or judgmental thoughts. If you catch yourself slipping back into your thoughts and reactions, just notice that and bring your attention back without the judgment and attachment. There are also mindful practices that are targeted for more specific goals, such as a body scan for enhancing our physical health or connection with our bodies, and loving kindness for improving our connections with others, like our loved ones and other relationships. Over the next few weeks, on Mondays, which I like to think of as Mindful Monday, I'll be giving you a series of how-tos on these specific ways of practicing mindfulness, including mindful eating, body scan, loving kindness, and a formal awareness practice. It's important to remember that mindfulness practices are more than just the stereotype idea of a guru sitting cross-legged in a Zen bliss. They are things we can bring into every facet of our life, and I'll be breaking down how in more depth with a few examples over the next few weeks. For now, remember to get started in bite-sized pieces with 3-minute increments for 2 to 3 weeks before adding on just an extra 2 minutes after that. Plan ahead to see where in your day you'll most likely benefit from having this carved out. And if you don't know, experiment to find out. But remember to do that mindfully. That means just notice how it worked out without judging or criticizing yourself. Lastly, try to do something mindful each day for only 3 minutes. But if you miss a day, stay compassionate and patient with yourself and just try it again for the next day. Remember, like any new skill, it'll take practice, patience, time, and persistence until we feel comfortable with it. I hope you've gotten a sense of the many different ways we can practice mindfulness here today. If you'd like a sample audio, you can access a brief one in the show notes. Remember that mindfulness is not a tool to serve as a magic wand and make all the difficult things in our lives disappear. It's a powerful tool to help set up a foundation for us to be in the best state to weather the challenges that do come our way. In our next episode, we'll begin a 4-part series on better understanding trauma and its pieces. Along the way, we'll see how mindfulness can be a useful tool in overcoming trauma, and we'll also have our Mindful Monday series as well. I've enjoyed sharing a set of tips for mindfulness how-tos with you today, and I'm very excited to get started on one of my areas of passion, understanding trauma, in the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Couch Podcast, a space for celebrating you. The contents of this episode are for informational and supplemental purposes only, and not a substitute for professional services. For more access to you beyond the couch, check out www.drsallinazari.com.